We're going to get started right now. So first quick question. How are y'all feeling this morning?
It's good.
Tired. Boys.
I had another one.
We'll pick it up because we have a great session for you today. And what you put into today's session, I can tell you, you are going to get out. So I'll ask you again. How you feeling today? Great. All right, that's better. I'm trying, Ann. I'm getting them there. All right, opening act. It's always tough. Well, first of all, welcome. My name is Wes Escondo. I have the distinct honor of serving as the president and CEO of the Eau Claire Community Foundation. And I'd like to be the first person to say, welcome to our learning community, because that's exactly what today is going to be. This is the first part of our Grant Writers Workshop, and extremely excited to be partnering with AMK Nonprofit Consulting and with Ann to deliver to all of us today a wonderful presentation, a wonderful session on grant writing, okay? So, second, with Eau Claire Community Foundation, one of the things that we are extremely blessed with is we've experienced some exponential growth. And with that comes a responsibility to pass that on to our nonprofit community. And so much so, we built into our strategic plan a commitment now, which is pillar number 3, to make sure that we are uplifting and providing continuous resources to all of the nonprofits that we serve in every community that we serve. And so we are excited that today is part of that effort. And as years continue, you will continue to see us being at the forefront and providing those resources for all of our wonderful, wonderful nonprofit community members, okay? Now, a few housekeeping items. From the ECCF side, we have a bunch of staff here that is here to help you with anything ECCF related or even session related. So we have Rebecca and Beth in the back, if you'd raise your hands. They're here from our program team. And then our VP of Development, Joe Carlson, in the back as well. We are here to help support your learning and to support the star of this show. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend Ann Kaiser to lead this session today.
Thank you very much. Okay, it doesn't sound like I'm on. It doesn't sound like my mic's on, does it?
No.
Okay, no. I turned it off of mute. It says I'm live. So, Wes, tell us more about the foundation.
Sure. I can do that while Ann was working. Funny story.
Oh, here we go. Am I on
And
now?
that's why-
Yay! Important that the first act, what do you call it? The opening act knows when to leave. It's time. I am really glad to be here with you. There's a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces. I didn't say strange faces, I just said new faces. I tend to have a little bit of a strange sense of humor, so please bear with me if it's Monday and too early and not your jam. But really glad to have you all here today. Thank you to the Eau Claire Community Foundation for doing this. What you're going to hear today, and then again in November, and then this is all being recorded, and so is the one in November, for you to be able to access. You're going to get all the handouts, as will anybody that isn't here today. And the content, all of this is a collaborative effort between the staff and volunteers at the Community Foundation to say, we want to help our nonprofit partners to be stronger. We want to help you do your absolute best in writing grants and for the Community Foundation and wherever else you're writing grants. So thank you to them, and really excited to see this kind of investment. It's very, very cool. So there is soda water, granola bars in the back. If you need to stand up and walk around a little bit, that is absolutely cool with me. Where are the restrooms? That was right. So you go out this door. Okay, out this door and to the left, or the staff will help you find those if you need a restroom. And so my goal today is for you to walk away with 3 tangible things that you're going to be able to apply right away. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you, but you're going to need some time to maybe process and figure out, does this actually work for our organization? So I'm just looking at 3 key things today for you to walk away with. One request I have is you have a handout, and you know what, I'm going to steal one from the front row because we all know the front row in the middle will never get filled. So as I'm going along here now, I'd like to ask you to just try to stand. Hi, welcome, come on in. Like just stay on point with me and try not to go too far ahead, because it'll make more sense if you stick with the sequence of the training. All right, so we're ready to go. So these are the three things we're going to touch base on today, the three parts of the training. The first, we're talking about processes and approaches. They're going to help you get more grants and to really maybe even be more efficient and effective in your grant writing. That's always my goal. You never have enough time to write grants. It tends to be a rushed process. So the first thing we're going to talk about is understanding the reviewer's lens. We're going to talk about some pre-work that you can do to make your writing more focused and efficient. We're going to talk about common mistakes and how to avoid them. And folks have been really generous. Within the Community Foundation, grant reviewers gave feedback to say these are some things that are pretty common mistakes that we'd love to see done differently or would help folks. I also have a grant writers learning cohort, and I did a session, and 3 people from area foundations who review grants were really generous. So they gave input into this. So lots of really good things about common mistakes, and I've got some tools, tactics to help you avoid those. And then we're going to do some hands-on work about the last half hour-ish of the training, where you're going to be able to start a grant. And I even have grant guidelines here, so you can start the Community Foundation grant. I apologize for this. All right, so we're going to spend some time using a tool that'll help you break down the grant writing process, and you can take that with you. All righty, so here we go. There we go. So understanding the reviewer's lens. This is something that when you might hear other grant writing consultants say to you, you've got to get inside the grant reviewer's head. How the heck do you do that? And some grant funders are more transparent, more upfront than others. Some, it's pretty hard, and it's okay. They get to decide how they put information out there. So sometimes it's something easier said than done, and it takes time. But I tell you, it saves time in the long run and makes you more effective. And really ups your chances of getting better funding. So I'm using a process maybe that some of you might be familiar with, practice active listening. Oh, I hate air quotes. Why did I do that? No, we aren't going to do any more of that today. So practice active listening, putting it in that lens. So the first thing is listen first for understanding. Go into discovery mode, and you've got to erase from your brain, what am I going to write for? Or, oh my gosh, we need this funding so bad. Or, I don't know what I'm going to do for dinner tonight. You got to just focus on what are they telling you. And so you read through the grant guidelines super carefully. Even if you've written for the Eau Claire Community Foundation 100 times, read through these grant guidelines because they might have changed. Or you might learn something new based on something you're doing differently. Discover what they've funded in the past. Some funders have that on their website. Do a Google search, look in social media posts, maybe the funder posted checks they've given out, or maybe the nonprofits receiving checks have posted those. So do good research. You can even dig into their 990s on GuideStar, which is now somebody else. But if you go to GuideStar, and you haven't used GuideStar, I'd suggest digging into there, because then you can find out who's gotten funding in the past. And just do broader research on the funder. For you, those of you who have teenage kids, pretend that this funder wants to date your kid. And you're like, I am going to find out who this is. Dig into them. Who's on their board? Why are those folks on their board? If you know somebody on the board, just reach out to them and say, I'm not trying to influence a decision, but why are you on this board? What do they do differently? How do they operate? So you really dig into who they are, what they do, how they do things. Then again, don't think about your response. Again, with active listening, listen for understanding, and while you're listening, you don't think about how I'm going to give them my response. You're supposed to be listening and absorbing all of this. So don't think about your program yet. Force yourself to think about them, their direction, their needs. What problems are they trying to solve? How do they want to solve those problems? What's their purpose in offering this grant? And you can find nuggets of information when you're changing your focus. So again, focus on their priorities, the needs they want to solve, the kind of solutions that they're looking for. Pay attention to the kind of information they're asking for. Don't just think, okay, this is the needs question. Look at the needs question and what kind of detail are they looking for. That can be really insightful. And then this piece is critical. Note their vocabulary. Learn their terms. Maybe you as a provider have different terms than they do. Pay attention to their terms and use their terms. Get to know and love their terms, because if you use your terms, it isn't meaningful to them. Do the translation for them. And then restate what they've said. I always take note of those key priorities. I might write them down on another piece of paper, and the tool I'm going to give you at the end is a spot where you can do that. Or I might just highlight things. It's really important that you take note of those key phrases, their values, their priorities, their focus areas, okay? Continually review that to make sure that your response aligns with what they're looking for. And another critical element, if you aren't certain what a particular phrase or term or value means, ask them. And this is something the grant reviewers said over and over again. It doesn't hurt to ask. What does rural mean? Okay? Eau Claire, to some, is considered rural. To others, it's not. So it's really important to understand what those terms actually mean to them. So this is one of the times in the process when I want you to take a pause and consider whether this grant program is actually a good fit. You might desperately need this funding. You might, you've gotten it in the past. There might be 100 reasons in your brain why you need to write this. But when you put on the reviewer's lens and say, if I were to apply for this funding, would I actually get it? Would I actually meet the need that they want to solve? Would I actually provide a solution they're looking for? It's critical that you do this along the way. Take an objective lens, because if this isn't a good fit, it's a waste of your time to write it. And you also, though, it's like, well, yeah, but my boss or the board is going to say, well, why didn't we write for this grant? You can give them the rationale as to why it wasn't a good fit and what you're going to prioritize instead. Okay? Better to write and spend time on the grants that are the best fit than those that aren't. All right. Next. I just threw this in here because it's a question that gets asked a lot, and this seems to be the time that it gets asked. Can AI actually be a good grant writer or grant partner? That's pretty small. I'm glad that you have notes in front of you. So can AI actually be a good writing partner? Yes, but and. This is Anne's context. And I have done a lot of listening, a lot of learning before I decided to dive into here's what I think about AI. AI is all about context. So if all you do is say, AI, here's this application, what should I write for it? It's going to go online and see what it can find about your organization, and you're going to get a very general response. You need to feed it context. You need to feed it facts. You need to connect the dots for it, okay? Don't ask it to write those responses. It doesn't know enough, and what you're going to end up with is a very general response. Grant reviewers are getting good at catching what is an AI response. It's, okay, apart from having a ton of M dashes in it, right? They are getting good at figuring out, okay, this looks like it was written by AI. It's too general. There's no local information in here. There's nothing about our past relationship, right? There's all these things that you want to have in these applications. I like to ask AI to evaluate my writing. So I will feed it my research. I will feed it the grant guidelines. I might even feed it past applications for the program that I'm thinking about writing for, or I tend to do this further down the road in the process when I'm in the last couple of weeks of writing. I'll say, here's my draft so far. Did I use their terms? Am I fitting their guidelines? Am I answering their questions? Okay? And you also want to say to AI, tell me what's wrong with this, because AI will tend to tell you, you are an amazing and magical partner, okay? So you want to be sure that you are asking it those critical things that you want it to look for, and are you meeting that standard? And again, I like using a subscription. So when I'm writing a grant, if I'm going to have it evaluate a grant, or if I'm working with a certain client or on a certain project, then I'm adding these files and I'm giving it context for for that one funder. If you just go into AI and ask general questions, it's not necessarily going to feed it from your context or your point of view. If you have a subscription and you don't do things by project, it might mishmash all of the input from all these different funding guidelines, okay? So a really important thing to keep in mind. That said, there are a lot of concerns about AI and the environment and economies and all those things. So absolutely take those things into consideration if you want to use AI. This is more if folks are like, I'm using AI, then I'm going to say, okay, here's how I would use it then, a little more strategically. All right? So now, oh, and by the way, I'm going to ramble on and on and on, but there will be time for questions and feedback at the end. So write your questions down, or I'll hang out after. So feel free to hang on to those questions. I'm always happy to answer questions. All right. And yes, I am using a script, because if I don't, we're going to go off the rails here pretty quick. So again, these are those common mistakes that I got from several different reviewers from different organizations that they said, here's what I would ask folks to do differently. All right, so common mistakes and how to avoid them. The proposal is misaligned with the funder priorities. And again, I touched on this once, but you've got to keep thinking about this. Yes?
It's in different order.
Is it? That would be unfortunate. Is it on the back of the first page?
Yeah. Common mistake. Missing key information.
Oh, well, see, there we go. I didn't review my own work. I'm really sorry.
I thought maybe you just jumped ahead.
Well, did I? I did. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm really glad this is recorded for. Thank you very much. No, I really appreciate that. Okay. Woo-hoo, here we go. And there are a couple folks in the room who are clients of mine, and right now they're going, yeah, she does this all the time. Sorry, guys. Okay, missing key information. Attachments aren't included. And a lot of good local funders will call you and say, hey, you missed this attachment. But it feels just a little disrespectful. And by the way, these grant reviewers want to give you the grant. They want you to get the funding. They are cheering for you. They are rooting for you. They're in your corner. And yet, if you aren't, make sure you've got all the attachments included. Or some questions just weren't answered. Or maybe they were answered with a yes or a no. Ooh, no, don't. So again, the tool I'm going to give you at the end, but if you don't like that tool, create a checklist that includes all the elements of the application. Start your application earlier than you think you need to. 4 weeks. 4 weeks is where I'm just like, you've got to start an application 4 weeks and ahead of time. And like the Eau Claire Community Foundation, the application or the guidelines are coming out November 12th. Okay, sorry. I love you, and she's the authority, so sorry. And so November 12th, and then it's due
January 21st.
Okay, so you've got a long time, but there's some time in there for the holidays. So open it up on the 12th or the 15th or whatever. Open it up that first week and start working on it and thinking about it, okay? I advocate for working on the attachments first. Too often, we just work on an application in the order that it comes up. All the questions, okay? So, but there's things on the bottom that take a lot of time. So it's human nature to do the application in the order that you see it. But in general, those first two things are what's your mission, what's your organizational background? You can knock those out right away. But you're going to need more time for a lot of other things that we'll be talking about. I also always set my deadline for a few days before the grant is due. Give myself one more chance to review it. Give somebody else the chance to review it. Also, if something doesn't come in on time, you've got a buffer. And you aren't creating a crisis for someone else, okay? And then, like I said, I always schedule someone to proofread and double check the application to make sure it's complete. All right, now number 2, proposal misaligned with funder priorities. It doesn't fit the focus areas. The program they wanted to funded clearly didn't match where we were at. One of the funders that I was talking to about this, they focus on STEM. And they said there's people that are putting things in there that aren't STEM related, or I couldn't see the connection. If it is STEM related, make sure you make the connection for them. So number 1, don't assume a previously funded program is still a match. They might have changed their guidelines. Or maybe your program has evolved, so it actually isn't a match anymore. Again, if you aren't sure about a guideline, reach out. People are really willing to help as much as they can. Don't submit if it's a mismatch. I'm going to be saying a few things over and over again. Clearly demonstrate, this is a key one. Clearly demonstrate how your proposal aligns with the grant programs and values. Use their language, connect the dots, use their words and phrases, mirror what they're looking for and how you do that, honestly and transparently, obviously. But yes, make sure that you are doing a nice job of making it very clear to them. And again, that's why when you spend the time thinking about their mindset ahead of time, it helps you get into that mindset at the end. Because if you're just thinking about how do I get this funding, you might miss that lens. And again, thoroughly read all the guidelines and materials before you start writing. All right, weak demonstration of a problem or approach. There were different folks that said they just didn't prove to me that they actually understand the need, or the need that we want to fund, but just the need that they're filling, or they haven't proven to me that this solution actually addresses the need the way they want it addressed. And again, the last one, I'm not convinced they have a really good idea of how they're going to address the need. It's too general or it's too broad. So here are some hints that I've learned. Data is your friend. Objective facts are your friend. If you can prove that you understand the need, do it. Prove to them that you understand the need. Or if there's an aspect of this need that you're going to meet, help inform them of the need that you're aware of, maybe from your own point of view, from research point of view, county research, maybe it's national research. You know, I think of like when I was with Boys and Girls Clubs, or for Big Brothers Big Sisters, or JA, or even National Children's Museums organizations. There's research out there that will tell you what a good practice is and why you should follow that. So look for that. I often will read something that someone has submitted and it'll say, we're the best. Good for you. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to give you $10,000, you know, right? Think about it. I'm glad that you feel really confident, but that doesn't prove to me that you know what you're doing, okay? And if space is limited, prioritize facts over storytelling. And when I heard this in that grant reviewers panel, it broke my heart 12 ways. I love storytelling. And we hear that so often. Tell a good story. Maybe there's a narrative you can tell about here's the need, and here's how we address the need with collaborators, and you put facts and figures and data and objective responses in there to help them see the progression in a logical, rational way. They might like stories too, but when you're giving out money, folks are telling us they want facts. How did you spend our last grant and what difference did it make is a huge thing that needs to be in reporting. But if you've been funded in the past, show that again here. Prove your success. So anyway, I get a little off track. But the other thing is that you don't want to forget is prove that you have the capacity to deliver. And think about who's doing the work. Whether it's a volunteer or a staff member, what are their certifications? What's their experience? What did they do before they came to you? How are they seen as a specialist? Or why do you do things a certain way? Well, this is a best practice documented by this national association. Think about how you are the best, okay? What makes you the best, and prove it to them, okay? Unclear or indirect responses. Sometimes when it says you have 15,000 characters, we think we've got to fill that. No, don't. Answer the question well, clearly, and concisely. But clearly, and be direct. And here's a way that maybe AI can be a partner, where you even feed it in there and say, here's their criteria, here's what they're looking for, here are the factors that I want to emphasize. Help me make this more clear and concise. And then review it and edit it based on your mindset. But make sure you're actually asking them, answering their question. The other thing we're learning is that with the volume of grant applications coming in, which all of you know, the grant reviewers have a lot more work to do. They're spending a lot more time. Did you know at Mayo, it's employees who have other full-time jobs that are squeezing grant review into their busy workday because they want to do this and they want to fund you. But be clear, be direct, make sure that you're answering their questions well. And again, making it reviewer friendly by using their terms and phrases, connect the dots for them, restate the question, maybe not verbatim, but let them know in that opening paragraph, here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's the need that we are going to address with this proposal, so that everybody knows we're all on the same page here. And the last one, don't include more information than what they're looking for. This was kind of a hilarious example, but I think we do it because somebody said, well, we've tried this before, it really didn't work well, but with your funding, we're sure it's gonna work this time. And like, oh, no. And so they were just like, I'm really glad they're confident, but oy vey, is this really who we wanna fund? Sometimes we can provide just a little bit too much information of things that are in our head that we're worried about. If we truly, honestly believe that we can provide a solution, we need to share that. And if there are barriers, we've got to figure out those barriers ourselves. Now, they might ask the question, what are the barriers that you might have to address? So then that's a spot to share those because everybody knows there are those barriers. But then you also say, and here's how we're going to address them. Okay, so that you're very solution-oriented. Proposal is disjointed, feels rushed. Well, often we are, okay? You're like, well, yeah, I am rushed. So again, you want a really clear train of thought. And sometimes, like with crucial conversations or crucial conversations that you have to have that are really emotional, sometimes I've got to write down my top 3 or 4 key phrases. Or here's my logic, here's my rationale. Stick to the script, Anne. Because if you let everything that's in here out, it's not going to go well. So you want to be, that's the kind of mindset you want to have when you're writing a grant. Remind yourself of what's your strategy, what's your rationale, what's your logic, and stick to it, okay? And make sure that you're touching on that all the way through, and that you're consistent. One place where they said folks aren't always consistent is the budget. So sometimes the budget is the last thing that we do. It really needs to be one of the first things that you do. You've got to look at designing your program. What does that mean for staffing, expenses, and then roll that into your budget and make sure it all aligns. And that's why if you leave time at the end for somebody else to read this, they can find those disjointed or missing pieces. Small errors lead to big credibility issues. Ironically, after I sent this to the printer, there were a few. And Quentin will point them out to me later. So with joy. No, I'm teasing. No, I'm not teasing. He will. But anyway, so I didn't leave enough time for reviewing before I shared all of this. But for instance, Excel Energy. You're writing the Excel Energy grant. And spell check is going to change it to EXCEL. Okay? And you must overcome spell check because it is respectful. And again, the people reviewing these are just like, we want to fund them. We really appreciate it. But every time you see that, your brain just kind of goes, So those are the little things that keep your credibility high. Always check for spelling and grammar and have someone who understands spelling and grammar review it for you. And again, ensure accuracy and intense, real consistency throughout. I don't know what that was there. Is that in yours or is that just in mine? Yeah, so anyway, that was a beautiful thing. That's into print and video forever. All right, so we're gonna keep moving, breaking the grant in writing process into manageable pieces. This has been a game changer for me and for a bunch of folks that I've worked with, because you go into a grant and it's just overwhelming and you're trying to fit it in with 12 or 20 other things that you're doing, okay? So this piece has helped me keep my focus, but also be able to complete things without creating crisis for myself or someone else. And just helps me use my brain in little manageable pieces. So this tool helps you develop a timeline. And like I said, I advocate for 4 weeks, and I advocate for, say that you're going to have your part of the grant done, like 3 working days before the grant is due, to leave yourself buffer because stuff's going to happen. You're going to get busy. Other people you're working with are going to get busy. The third bullet point is that when you need other things for this, for example, with Boys and Girls Clubs, Tasha's here. So when I was writing for Boys and Girls Clubs, you say, okay, we've got this funding. They want to solve this problem. What programs are we writing? At what sites? And are they funded or not? Well, materials are funded or staffing isn't, or staffing's funded and materials, right? There's all this input that you need from the program expert side of things. So talk to them first, okay? And then talk to your bookkeeper, accountant, finance person pretty quickly after that so you can get started on the budget. So you're giving people these tasks well ahead of time. I am so guilty of within 24 hours or less of when a grant is due, saying, oh, I need the most current financials. Can you just whip those out for me? I have to submit it in an hour, okay? They would appreciate it if you did that much sooner. And that's one of those things where we all need favors from these folks. So if that's one less crisis favor that you need from them, it's kind of nice. So these are the things when you manage these tasks, put a timeline on it and assign who's responsible, you can give people plenty of time to get it done. The other thing I love is this becomes a resource document, and I always use this as a shareable document. So if you use SharePoint or Google Docs or whatever, this is a shareable document that anybody can go into and say, oh, we're writing for Eau Claire Community Foundation, we're writing for this grant program. we're writing for this program that we do. Oh, look, here's when the program runs, or here's how many kids we're going to serve, okay? So that you don't have to answer the questions every time. People can go into it at their leisure when they need it, but also when you're working on 25 other projects, you might have made a decision with the program manager and then you forgot. And you come back to the grant application 3 days later and you're like, oh, what did we decide? Then you don't have to go back in an email trail or give somebody a call. It's all right there. It also forces you to think about strategy and approach before you start writing. And I know I've said that a couple of times, but structure and supportive accountability are your friend. So if you build a framework for that, that's what you'll get. Ensures you have a complete application because every question and every attachment is a part of this document. It integrates peer review and it just makes sure the whole process is more collaborative and supportive. Grant writing can be very isolating and it can feel really stressful. When you do it in a more collaborative team approach, it takes some of the stress away, and when we've got less stress, our brain works better and we can write better, we can think better. So let's look at this document. So now it is page 4, and you will get a blank one of these in a couple minutes, and we're going to practice starting a grant, and you will get this electronically along with the handout as well. Okay? I call this a grant intake form. Some folks call it a grant task form. Give it whatever name you want. But this is where the most critical information lives. So the first half of the first page is really organization information. Are you running this through a certain site, or is there a certain population, right? So you write down exactly who are we serving in this. You put anything specific to the grant funder. I love putting in the login and password because then again, if I forget it or if somebody else needs it in order to upload something, it gives access to everybody. Or, and I look at Tasha, the next year when you're writing it, it's like, what's the login and password? Well, let's look at the last grant intake form and hopefully it's all current. So that's where this can live. And then again, one last thing I want to suggest, use an evergreen email for grant applications. Grants at Children's Museum Eau Claire, grants at cvclubs.org, grants at JA Wisconsin Northwest. So that if people change, I don't mean like their personality or what they like or anything. If positions change or people's responsibilities change, then when that report is due, and Rebecca and I worked on this a lot with the Eau Claire Community Foundation, when that report is due, it's not going to the center director that's no longer there, it's going to grants at. And then if you have a grant manager, great, or whoever in your organization is responsible for grants, they're able to look at that email account and then they can, give it off to somebody else if they need to. All right. The next part is this bottom half of page 1. This is the funder specific or the grant specific information. Again, this is the reminder of what are the decisions we made. What's our strategy? What's our rationale? It's a high-level overview of the most important grant program guidelines so that if you say to a program manager, they want to fund STEM, it's right here in writing so that they can look through here. They want to fund STEM for middle school students or whatever it is, all of that lives right here. So you can put the high-level key phrases, priorities, their funder focus, all of that can live right here so that every time you look at this, you are reminded of who they are and what they want. Alrighty? And then the next piece, or on page 5, this is where across the left-hand side, that second column in, I list all the grant questions and all of the requirements for attachments. I put all of that on the left-hand side. Across the top, oh, and then I add a deadline date for each one. So you might put it in here as, okay, this is question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. But if you're going to do a letter of support, you want to start on those early because those take a long time. So it might be one of the last things that you add on the left here, but you put a deadline date of December 15th. I want to be sure that we have our letters of support in before the holidays. Okay? And then the beauty of this is you can sort by deadline date so that then you know which order your tasks you need to be doing them in. Across the top then, you'll see I've added strategy direction. So what do we decide? What do we know for sure? What program are we writing for? Okay? That's where all the decisions go. But then you put the grant writer. Maybe there's a program director that you need information from, or that's a partner in writing this. Maybe it's your finance, bookkeeper, accountant that you need information from. Whoever is on your team to write this grant, put those positions across the top. And then you add detail on the tasks or the questions that that person needs to provide input on, and you highlight that. So when they go to this form, and the finance person is like, okay, they said we're starting this grant and they need my help. They can open up this shared document, look under the finance column, and look at where there are cells that are highlighted. Now, if it's simply highlighted and I didn't provide any detail, they can just look at what's the question and here's what I need to provide. But if I need specific direction from them, I'll put that detail in that highlighted box. And then when they answer the question or they provide the thing, you put it under strategy, direction, you unhighlight that cell, you take out that detail, or maybe you just write done. But you be sure you unhighlight that cell because then it's much more efficient for your team partners to go into this document and say, what do I need to do? Well, they look at their name, they look for the highlighted cells, and then they know what's needed. All right? And then the last piece that I'll talk about is, you'll see in here, I put some blackout dates in there. We've got Thanksgiving week or deer hunting week. Maybe you want to put who's out, or for the holidays, who's gone, so that you know if you need something from the finance person and they're going to be out for surgery for 6 weeks, you better get this done and make their deadlines before they leave, okay? Or again, folks aren't going to be working over the holidays, so let's make sure we get it done before them. And like I said, then you can sort this chart, and when you get it electronically, it'll be in a Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, where then you can sort things by the name of the person, so they can sort it and find what they need to do, or by the deadline, so you can say, okay, what do I need to do first, second, third, etc. All right? And like I said, you want to schedule those foundational tasks earlier in the timeline. What program are we going to fund? You got to have those conversations the first week after those grants are open, okay? And you do that, and again, if somebody's on vacation or there's a big event, you can schedule that in a way that it works with their schedule and it doesn't become a crisis, and you can actually have an in-depth conversation. Something that I often recommend is that you have a touch base, say with your program manager, with your accountant, once a month, and you pull up all these grant intake forms. You say, okay, what are we working on today? Or this month? Or what do we need to talk about? Hey, I need this information by the end of next week. Okay, well, they maybe need an additional detail from you. So you have a human touch. But this is just a super helpful piece where all the information can live. All right? So I've talked a long time. And I think, would you mind, whoever's going to hand those out, right, there's 2 pieces that you're going to get. You are going to get a blank grant intake form, and you are going to get the newest guidelines that Rebecca shared with me for the ECCF program grant. I didn't do the asset, the operations, and the program. That's killing a lot of trees. So pretend you're going to write a program grant, and then fill in here, and if you're here with somebody else from your organization, you can pair up, discuss this, or if you're sitting next to a stranger and you're just like, I don't know, how would you do this? You can certainly work together if you want. But this is your opportunity to just kind of play with this form, see how you would use it, and I will be wandering about, and I can answer questions to help you with this. But this is just a way to practice. With that, are there any big looming questions or anything I said that needs further explanation or you'd like further context? Yes, Tasha.
Not a question.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. Because we're recording, we need the microphone. So hang on, Tasha.
My voice isn't here.
No, it doesn't. No, I know. You would really like that to be what's true, but okay, are we on here? Yes, we are now on. Okay, thanks, Tasha.
In the grant intake document, when you have it as a live document, if you have the budget form that you're downloading that needs to be used, and it's in a folder, if you can link to that, that's really helpful. Having worked with Anne and now being the grant manager for the Boys and Girls Club, the less clicks you have to make somebody else do, the faster they'll get you the information.
Phenomenal, thank you. Yes, so as this lives, you can link documents within this intake form. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, that means it's really, really intuitive or you're super overwhelmed. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to be working on this. And let's see, what time are we going to come back together? Actually, a little ahead of time. Okay, let's say at 11 o'clock, that'll just give you 10 minutes to play with the form. At 11 o'clock, let's come back together and ask questions, reflect on the process, all right? This is where we should have music.
Secret's showing it there.
All right.
Do that.
Does anybody else want more time to play with this?
Thanks for chatting with me. You're best to up. I'm still walking your name. Let's take that away. So let's chat. Let's chat. Okay.
What do you think?
So I'm super cute.
What do you like about it? What don't like? What you don't like about it?
So what questions do you have with that?
Colleen, you got to be thinking of something because Colleen has learned this process like 12
I love this process.
So,
I love this process.
hang on. Well, no. Okay. That's like me asking AI, how was my writing? And I asked Colleen, and she's like, I think it's magical. That's really not fair. I don't know, Colleen, do you have anything you would add that could help folks who are kind of wondering where to start even?
I think that when you look at this process, I do love it, but it is time consuming and sometimes you want to just start writing. I have found that if you fill out the process, if you fill out the worksheet, your writing is more clear, more concise, but also more focused. You can get done faster with what you do. So I think that's the time savings comes at the end, but doing the work becomes duplicative, right? You get to use it for the next one. You have things stashed away in your files that are really, really fundamental helpful as you go on to the next and next and next.
Can you give an example of that? How like, yeah, that's right. I didn't talk about this. Like this isn't, you have to, the time you spend is the same for every grant. No, this should get more efficient, right?
Right, and as you look at your programs, you may need to write several grants for them, right? So you may say the same things, but you have to start, and then you can go and look at what the funders' words are. What is their vocabulary? And change a paragraph to match that particular funder from something that you've used before. But you have it all in one place. Your files are organized in a way that you can reach for that. I struggled greatly before I sat down through some advanced cohort classes and said, okay, where did I write this? It's a Word doc that I have to search, and it's sort of messy, and it's not easily grabbable. This organized my thoughts in a way that I could create the files that match some of the standard questions that come across or the standard paragraphs that you use. So that was very helpful.
Great. Joe or Rebecca, do you mind grabbing the microphone? Thank you. Are you done, Toasty Cheese? I'm done. I'm sorry. Okay, who wants to say, okay, I don't get it about this, or this isn't practical, or I don't understand this part of the process, or just a question about anything we talked about yet. See, that doesn't bother. You just. Hell, they're so kind. Okay, so Rebecca, we've got Mo right here. Thank you. Y'all are very kind, but let's cut to the chase. Let's be critical.
A moment of vulnerability here.
Thank you.
Program grants, asset grant, operations. All I want is operations. Why do I need to spin this all up?
That's just what these guys asked. They love that question.
So I need somebody fixed with moving the clocks from each space to help understand better. I know what my programs are. You understand, and I can tell you great stories about them. But needing to understand what the readers are looking for and how to help them understand what about my operations that in itself is a program.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you. Great question. And these guys up here just asked the same thing. Now, this can be funder specific. So I always will say, reach out to the funders to ask them for distinctions on what's program and what's operations, okay? But with these folks, you're with Stand in the Lake Fire, right? So you talk to them because they're like, we just need general operations. And I said, okay, what's in your general operations budgets? And they said, well, salaries. And I said, okay, whose salaries? The music director. That's a program cost. And your music director is a program cost. And they went, ooh. And then the tech person, right? You can't deliver your program, which is rehearsals and concerts, without your tech person. Sometimes, if you look at an executive director, what's their job? Okay, if the executive director is working on like strategy with the board, that might be like an overall administrative tech cost, right? But if the executive director is supporting a program director, a music director, whatever, to say, what programs are we going to run? Well, what's the need in the community? Or what have we found is working or not? And you're helping to develop a better program, you're evaluating your program and improving your program. The executive director's time to support that program might be able to be a program expense. You got to prove it, okay? You can't just fluff and estimate. But there are a lot of things that an executive director does that informs program. TJ, can I pick on you a little bit? Because, okay, Joe, do you mind giving her the microphone? So, I'm going to ask you a question first, though. Don't just read it. Okay. So, if you look at a program budget, or what you would apply for a program in your organization, how do you distinguish between program and operations? To Simone's question, or even to Stand in the Light, are there some distinctions that you make? Or if you
My operations, I think of more of like my building expenses or my electrical, but like things I would pay for as an adult than my is what I would think of. My trash, my garbage, like supplies for maybe those programs, depending on what it is. And then if I were thinking program specific, our meal service is our main program. And then like Ann said, who are the partners or people a part of this if I'm just asking for that piece. But then I have outreach programs that I do. And we have several outreach programs. So I might bucket that into something else depending on where my donations have been to say, okay, they're not funding this area, so let me go for a grant to fund this for at least a year or something to figure out.
What would an
What's the
outreach,
one?
do you have an outreach budget?
Yes.
What's in your outreach budget?
Our outreach budget is kind of, it's really tiny just because we've been donor heavy in that area. But I look at like things for our birthday in the back, supplies for like our birthday supplies.
Okay.
I look at Avery's time to organize all of those. 'Cause we have 4 or 5 different programs. So we organize my inventory, wages. I look at our bus passes, where we have our bus pass program. That's an ancillary expense that we have for that particular program.
Yep.
So
So does that help? Because to deliver what I laid out with these folks is from the time a program starts till it ends, who's involved in it that you have to pay their wages? How much of their staff time goes to delivering those programs? Just because it's salaries and wages doesn't mean it can't be a program expense. Program expenses do not only have to be materials, okay? We even talked about when they're doing rehearsals and concerts, you have to have a facility to do that. So can a portion of the rent go toward that? Yes, but again, ask the funder, okay? And give them, here's our whole program budget. Program budgets can be difficult for nonprofits to develop. It's just like we just do it. You do need you need to label your programs, you need to develop program budgets, and even get to the point where is the calculation or the logic or the rationale for how you distribute your facility time amongst different programs. How many square feet do they use? Well, then can you roll in a portion of trash? I mean, when I think of your meals, again, I'm sorry if I'm causing any problems for the Eau Claire Community Foundation. I'm supposed to do one more. Actually, but hey, your meal service generates a lot of trash.
Yeah.
Why can't you put your trash cost into that program budget? No. You need that facility to deliver that program. Why can't part of your utilities, your rent, whatever goes into that space for that time, do that? Got to have math to do that, though. And so it's, again, like that.
Or just a really good bookkeeper.
You what?
Really good bookkeeper.
A really good bookkeeper, yes. And a really good nonprofit bookkeeper. So if somebody wants to invest in that, that's great. Do I just sold a microphone?
Thank you. And still, since I have the time, I want to just make sure that I get it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give way more information than I should, but I need it. So here we go. Stabilization costs, as of today, $11,223. And what makes that up? The amount of time that the outreach specialist focuses on.
Yep.
The cost of items that we provide within that. Charging her rent for her office. So
Yep.
I did not add electricity, so that means that is going to go up. But is this what you are saying?
Yes, and you develop a program budget, and then based on the funder's guidelines, you say, okay, these are the things in our budget. Do you fund all of these things? Because if you don't fund all these things, I'll take them out of the, you've got a program budget, but then you've got your grant budget. So I can show you, here's how much this program costs. Here's what you'll fund. Okay, then I'll take out the rent and the electricity. Here's the staff time and the materials that you submit for your grant budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. I hope that's really helpful. Other questions along those lines? Because this is critical. Yes, sorry, thank you.
So I have a question regarding that. Then can you show them the whole program though, and show that you have funding from other in-kind or other stuff with that, and leave it in and just say you will be just funding this portion, but say show them the whole budget for that program.
In general, okay, and I'm not going to say this is how the Community Foundation wants this, but in general,
I find that funders like to know that there are other people involved. And they often ask how much of this is already funded and by claim. And so if you're like, man, they're halfway to their goal, this is a great way to leverage our resources. We give them 10,000. It's got an active program where they've already raised 50. Boom, let's do it. So I think that is, again, when we talk about credibility, facts, track record, things that are going to make you stand out from others, I think that's a real badge of honor. Yep. And again, look at the guidelines. Make sure if they don't ask that specifically, but you want to include it, then what I would say is answer the question that most clearly relates to this. And then at the end and say, by the way, the total program budget is $60,000. We have raised 50. Or total program budget is 16,000. We've raised 35. We're asking you for 7,500. And then for the remainder, here are the other folks that we have asked into, or we're going to raise the money in this way. Show them you have a solid plan. I think that's very key. Very good. Other questions? Love this. We're at 11:15 and I have one more activity for you. And then if you want, we can have another 10 minutes of Q&A. If you don't, we can end early and I can just hang out for questions. So this last page, you can't see if I have a slide for it. Oh, good. You typed out ratings how many minutes it takes and keep it up. Okay. This hour and a half of your life is not going to be worth a whole lot if it doesn't make a difference in how you do things, right? So this is yours, kind of your so what sheet. Okay? So what? So think about what are the top 3 things you learned that really matter. And make it small. Maybe it isn't necessarily, I'm going to integrate the grand intake sheet. Just say, these are the 3 parts of the grand intake sheet that are really critical. Or I'm going to reorder the order that I write grants in. Or I'm going to start 4 weeks early, whatever. So top 3 things that you want to integrate. Well-made plans are phenomenal. However, if we're going to do things differently and try to change someone else's life, we should talk to them about that, okay? My husband just taught me that. I have many great plans. He's like, super, what about me? So you got to think about who else does this impact and how does it impact them and talk to them about it. They might get pretty darn excited about this process or aspects of it that are going to make their life easier. So share that with them. If there's things where you're like, I don't know if they're going to like this, have a conversation to open the door so that you can actually integrate this process and move things forward. Or talk to your supervisor and just say, I really want to integrate this. This is going to affect so-and-so and so-and-so. What do we think? So I think that's a critical part of this. And then the third question, are there barriers to integrating this? One might be time. One might be scheduling. I don't know. But what are the barriers? And then how are you going to address those? And then figure out, okay, what are the 3 to 5 things I'm going to do and by when to start integrating these great 3 ideas that I have. So maybe based on, it's kind of like a grant application, based on the last question, maybe you want to answer the top question last. It's like, oh, I've got 3 great things to do. And it's like, oh, wait, I actually got to move the needle on these. But just hope that this helps you actually apply and change the way you do things. And work on this like maybe for 5 minutes. And then we can come back and do a little more Q&A if you want. All right, let's come back together. Yeah, so I am I at the
Sydney,
no,
but I just sit there and see which was his auntie. This is just this second question.
That's supposed to be on.
Obviously, so special.
I might have run out of batteries.
We can hear you fine.
So
Like use the mic.
I'm gonna, but for the recording, you can still, yeah. Tell you what, Hannah has a question. So let's go with Hannah's question while I take that.
So, yeah, that out.
I was wondering if there's a reporting best practice. Personally, I'm always up for writing the grant and really feel more hesitant when I think about all the reporting requirements, and then also thinking that the people who are running the programs are the closest to the information. So I was just curious if you have recommendations. Yes, reporting process.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna get this anymore. Also, here we go. Tar button.
Look at that little green button.
Okay, yes. I use a very similar system to this, the intake form for reporting. And I'll actually, as soon as if you get the grant, create that report that says how much we're refunded for, what program we're refunded for, like throw all of those things in there. And then what do we have to track for this funder? And who's going to track that? So you give them a hat up front. Everybody's adults. Everybody forgets. So you periodically get together with people and remind them. And then when you meet, like with the program manager, to talk about, okay, what's the latest grant intake form we're working on? What's the latest grant report form we're working on? Are we tracking everything we need to be tracking? That's tricky. And that the accountant knows what we need to be tracking and for what reasons and all those good things. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Thanks. So we're in the point, I'm just winding down. We'll take a few questions, but I wanted to just throw up here. I want to throw this out there. Again, I'm really grateful to the Eau Claire Community Foundation for partnering with me to do this. This is a phenomenal opportunity. The QR code there is if I have a free resource. If you want to get a document that talks about 20 places to look for grants, you can use that QR code, or you can go on my website, and I believe it's at the bottom of the very first page, sign up for my free resource. And I do have a grant learners report that we meet twice a month, and a lot of the things like these forms and other things that we share. So it's one of my highlights of the month for me. I just love this group where we just hash out problems people are having with grants and try to help solve them. And then I've got a resource folder from videos and all kinds of good stuff. With that, any final questions, other questions, or things, hints, tips, tricks, things that have worked for you that you'd like to share with the group? Or your worst grant experience ever? That has nothing to do with the SFC. A bad experience with the Eau Claire Community Foundation. Yes, thank you. We've got a question right here with us, if you don't mind. With the mic. Sorry.
One of my biggest frustrations is working with renters that are not local out there, and they're so hard to communicate with.
Yeah.
A lot of grants require some kind of a letter first to be invited to make the grant, and then not to receive any kind of acknowledgement of the letter or any kind of timeline. Do you have any suggestions for how to stay in touch or how to communicate with those grantors?
It's tough. It's tricky. You know, someone mentioned, we're going to talk to the Kellogg Foundation. That's one where they get a gazillion applications or letters of intent. And so they just say, we aren't going to acknowledge it, not even like a automatic one. So sometimes you just have to acknowledge that's the way it is. Not everybody's as communicative as a lot of our local funders, which is super helpful. But do some digging. Sometimes maybe on the foundation page where they announce their grant, maybe they don't have contact information.
you dig into their grant guidelines, or if it says for technical assistance or something, you might be able to find an email. For Egan, there might be a phone number for the foundation apart from that application page. And here's the thing. Contact them with a really good purpose, and just be like, thank you so much for this opportunity. We submitted our letter of interest. Can you tell me what are the next steps in the process? Thank you very much. And that's pretty awesome. Sometimes bigger funders also, or especially at the state and federal levels, they'll have a call for office hours or video calls that you can get on.
Yes.
Make every effort that you can to be on that call if they're offering that. And once in a while, they'll even post a recording. And so, okay, I couldn't attend, but I'll listen in on that recording because that's their way of showing support, that they're just so big that they just might not be able to respond individually.
You seem to be talking about a company or organization.
I am talking about a company organization. Why, thank you. Oh, Connie, that's so funny. Yeah. That's so funny. I must have said like Siri or something. That's going.
Okay, question. Just you have so much experience in this field, and this is such a great process. Is there a grant amount that you think equals the amount of time and effort to apply for? So if it's
Yeah, she went there. That's a great question. Yep. Here are the 1,200 factors that go into that. Sometimes you might spend more on a particular funder's grant application because if you get this funding, it might leverage something else. Maybe there's another board member, or it gets you to the 55% level, or I don't know. So you have to go, it isn't as arbitrary, I'm afraid, as time and money. So think about, what does it mean? What would this leverage if we get this? How does it help if these people know about what we're doing? Even if we don't get this, who else now knows about this? This is it's a similar example, but like 100 Women Who Care. You present to them one of 3 organizations. One gets funded. More often than not, the other 2 get checks because other people in the room have heard the story. And then you have new donors, okay? So there are some things that are worth the bother. There are other things where maybe you say, well, if it's for materials, it's a really long application. I could actually get materials from this other source and it'll take me half the time or a fourth of the time. Sometimes there are grants that they don't leverage anything for you. They take a lot of time. And maybe you spend the time on this means you don't get to spend the time on something else. So it's a lot about prioritization.
Winnie?
Yeah, it's not exactly clear. All right. So Wes has been, you got a question. Okay, one more question and then we'll wrap you up.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I had 2.
Okay,
This is my
perfect.
first, my first 2 enjoying a great writing, or I never read before, but how if or how religious are these great, like here in a church, apply for or church program apply for?
Okay. I will let Wes address that. Yeah, Wes will address that at the end. Okay. Do you have another question that I can?
Yeah. The second question is, what website or where can I find all the grades that are available out there?
It is the best question, and the reason they're laughing is because they looked at 12 different sites and haven't been able to find the one. It's a process, and I recommend that you find the things, you find the people who like to fund the kinds of things that you need to do. And then you start looking for like or similar organizations. And it's kind of like you got to start with a circle and then you reach out and you reach out. That free resource has a lot of things that are obvious on it, of places to look for grants. It also has spots
where it might be spots you hadn't thought of looking before, like on social media. If you go to, and you're with the Hmong Association, so if you go to other Hmong associations around Wisconsin, and you go on their social media, and you look for the check presentations that are in their social media, you may find out about some funders that might fund you as well. It's things like that, where it just takes a lot of research. So it's an excellent question. It's a frustrating question. That's why everybody went, yeah, I don't know, yeah. You need to devote time to it, even if it's an hour a month or an hour every 3 months, just to do some research to see if you can find 1 or 2 new funding sites. There are funding sites listed in that resource where you can go to your grants across Wisconsin. Here are federal grants. Yeah, there are spots. The other thing though is there's a lot of spots that are really good that you have to pay for, and that's another whole conversation. Like with Boys and Girls Clubs, there's a subscription that they get, but they share it with somebody else. Junior Achievement has a great tool that's shared across the state. They split the cost. So you might be able to get a subscription for something that's a great tool, and there's a couple of those in that resource, and maybe you find other people to share it with. So.
Okay. So you're talking about AI before, so AI kid do this, AI go find all the grants that. No.
Maybe. But then you've got to dig into each of those and see, are they actually fit? If you were to say, here's who we are, here's what we do, we need funding for these programs, you might get a better response. No. Yes. But that's amazing. Great questions. Great questions. Thank you all very much. And now I will introduce my wonderful friend, Beth.
Oh, goodness. I have another round of applause for her, and she is amazing. I don't know if too many people to do it better. Hopefully this was helpful. And now part 2 is coming up on November 17th. Is that correct, team? Yes. So we'll be releasing, I think the link is already live, but we'll be putting out some press to remind everybody to sign up for that one. I don't want to forget about your question. Your question was for churches, eligibility for the grant cycles based on churches. So at ECCF, churches are eligible for our grant cycles. The one consideration is that if your program requires people to be members or subscribe, it will make it ineligible. So your program has to be open to everyone. So even if you are of a specific faith denomination, whatever the case may be, but you are running a program that's open to everyone, it's eligible for the program. Does that help? Okay, perfect. Well, with that, any last minute questions for Eau Claire Community Foundation that you want to throw out there? Other than that, I'm just really grateful for all of you joining us. Hopefully you're walking away with good stuff. One of the things I will always say is Anne has given us sage wisdom. That learning will amplify if you all continue to talk to one another outside of this place. Don't let be the next time you run into the person to your left or right, be, say, the next time you go to a great training. Get someone's information. Share your successes. Share your challenges, because that is the only way that we continue to uplift our nonprofit community. With that, thank you for joining us. We'll hope to see you again on November 17th. Thank you.